Hello, this is Phil Wagoner. I'm here today with the latest edition of my podcast, Raising Godly Children in an Ungodly World. In it, I'm interviewing young men and women who have gone through or are currently in the last 2 years of high school or college, or are new to navigating the world as an adult. These are young people who have kept their faith in God through the social and mental pressures that affect us all, especially young adults who are trying to find their niche in life. I want to know how they did it and are continuing to do it as they go from one step to the next in life. Then, when possible, we'll talk to their parents and get their perspective on their involvement. And at the end, I'll expound on a scripture from the Bible that talks about parenting. Hello, this is Phil Wagner. I'm back with another podcast on raising godly kids in an ungodly world. I have a very special guest with me today, somebody, again, that I've known since birth. I have paid attention to her through school and through church and everything, and I think she's going to have some outstanding things to say. Actually, when I first started to do this, and I made a list of possible people to interview, she was second on the list. First was Kaylee Christensen, which was the first one we did. And now I finally have caught up with Joslyn Gutaw. Our schedules have finally come to a point where we can sit down and talk. Joslyn is a sophomore in college now, so this has been a full year in the making. At any rate, welcome, Joslyn. Thank you for making time.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Pleasure is all mine. I want to start out with, I kind of said this in the introduction. I know who I think you are. Who do you want people to know you are?
I think it's really hard to describe yourself, but first and foremost, I'm a child of God. That always comes first when describing me. Other than that, I'm a college student at the University of Northern Iowa. I'm involved with a campus ministry there called Chi Alpha. It's not a fraternity. I know it sounds like one, but it stands for Christ Ambassadors. I'm also on the color guard team up there. I'm studying psychology, planning on getting licensed in mental health counseling so that I can work eventually in counseling for a Christian clinic. So those are the future plans.
Okay. How much school? I said you were a sophomore, but you're really a little further along than that, aren't you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I have 3 more semesters left of my undergraduate, and then I'll go to grad school for 2 years.
So you'll go right to grad school.
Correct.
Okay, let's talk about the color guard for a minute.
Okay.
Because I've always enjoyed the halftime shows and this and that. And
yes.
Color guards are certainly part of that. Now, when you were in high school, at least the last year, if not the last 2 years, I think you choreographed the high school flag.
Yes.
Corps.
Yep.
Okay. Is that something that are you doing that in college, or are you doing any of that in college?
This year I'm a captain for the Panther Marching Band color guard team. And so I get to choreograph and help clean and just help run practices. And it's a really great opportunity to show leadership and also creativity while still doing what I love, which is color guard.
Yeah. Do you have an opportunity to share Christ with any of the kids, or do you just let your lifestyle?
Yeah, the thing about marching bands, especially in college, is that it's a different community of people.
Okay, let me. Is it the nerds? Is that a way of saying it's the nerds?
That could be a way of putting it. You could also
band
say
nerds.
The band nerds, yes. And also, college is just a different lifestyle in general. Mm-hmm. So I've found that, especially last year, it was really hard to jump into that and feel like I want to be included, but their idea of fun outside of color guard is very different from my idea of fun. So it was hard to balance I want to be connected to you, but I don't want to go have fun with you the way you want to have fun. So this year, I've been able to connect with some other Christian girls on the color guard team, and so we've kind of bonded really well. And then through that, we've been able to share our opinions and our beliefs and create different ways to bond with the other girls that aren't necessarily on their turf.
Okay, that is a ton of information I want to get back into, because you said a couple things that are really interesting. But let's back up to high school.
Okay.
Now, you were both homeschooled and went to public school.
Correct.
All right. So how'd that work? I mean, did you go through, do you think you went through the normal peer pressure things of being in a public school?
Definitely not, because I wasn't around those kids all the time. And actually, in fact, in 8th grade, up until 8th grade, I was in the public school.
Oh, okay. I guess I'd forgotten that.
Yes. And the summer before my freshman year, I really felt like God was telling me, like, hey, you need to be homeschooled. And I was like, what? What do you mean I need to be homeschooled? I love this school that I go to. I'm super involved. I was doing all the sports, all the band things, speech, everything. And so I just like spent a lot of time in prayer thinking like, what is the reason for this calling? But ultimately I obeyed and I brought it up to my parents and I was like, hey, like, I'm really feeling like I'm supposed to be homeschooled. So how do we make this happen? And from there, I went through all 4 years of high school being homeschooled. And I would go to a couple classes at the high school just to stay involved in band and just a couple other classes. So my time was really split between public school and homeschooling. I think my homeschooling allowed me to learn from a more Christian perspective. And
So when you say let me interrupt you. When you say you were homeschooled, did you have a curriculum that, who gave you the curriculum? Where'd you get the curriculum?
yeah, so my first 2 years of homeschooling, I did an online program at Liberty University Online Academy. So that's a Christian-based college who
Right.
has created a high school academy for kids who want to be homeschooled. And then from there, I did a traditional year of homeschooling, which is straight from the textbook. We found Christian curriculum, and all of my classes were straight from a textbook. And then my senior year, I just took all college courses online so that I could get ahead.
So you say it was a Christian curriculum. Explain that to me.
So it just kind of took...
What's the difference between a Christian math course and a traditional math course?
Well, math, there's not much you can do there.
Okay.
But in history, it took a Christian perspective of things that happened in history and touched more on how faith and religion affected different events that happened in history. For science, it explained the different types of creation, and it touched on all theories of creation, but it emphasized, the one that God created the universe. And then it really took the perspective of looking at the things of science from a Christian's viewpoint and noticing how beautiful the things are that we have. And so I think by learning from that, I have a better perspective of how beautiful everything is that God has created for us.
So it sounds to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, that that curriculum gave you more of an opportunity to make up your own mind, as opposed to, let's take the theory of evolution, for example, which is a theory. I've been around curriculums that emphasize that. They took out the word theory and made it, so this is a fact. And but it doesn't sound like that. So you don't really have, a young mind, you're presenting facts to them and they take them, okay, this is true. I remember one time that my oldest daughter had just started, or she was in first grade. And I don't remember the exact question, but she had misunderstood her teacher. It was obvious that she had misunderstood her teacher and something, and I'd said something. And she said, "No, Dad, that's not true because Mrs. So-and-so said this." And it was almost like, all right, I'm one plus one is 2. And she came back with, no, Mrs. So-and-so said it's 3. And I couldn't move her off of it because the teacher was always right, and that's, and I've noticed that, I taught children's ministry. I taught the Bible children's ministry for 30 plus years. And one of the things that I learned early is I needed to make sure my facts were right and that I couldn't, my sense of humor is somewhat, I don't know what the word would be, but I exaggerate things in a humorous way that are obvious, and I had to learn to be careful because kids took me very serious. One time, I was teaching in a big convention, and at the beginning of the week, I said we're going to have a contest, and the winner will get a free trip to Hawaii. Now, in my way of thinking, you're not going to get a trip to Hawaii. There's got to be a catch to it. Well, I had a puppet, and this puppet was an icebreaker puppet, kind of a smart aleck type puppet and everything. And he came out every day and started the thing off, and the kids loved him, and he was funny and so on and so forth. Well, at the end of the week was going to be this contest, and it was a beauty contest. That's right. I haven't told this story in years. It was a beauty contest, and so all of a sudden, these girls start showing up all dressed, in these beautiful dresses and so on and so forth. And so I had this puppet come out, and he was going to be the judge. And then I had this female puppet that looked like him, and she came out, and he chose her. And those kids were so mad at me. Oh, this was a setup. I'm going, yeah, it was set up. I can't afford to send you to Hawaii, so on. But I learned from that kids believe authority, and so I don't know if that made any sense or why I told that story. But go ahead.
No, yeah, but with my science courses allowing me to kind of explore what I believe, a lot of the assignments were to decide what my belief was, no matter what it was, and the teacher wasn't going to judge me. She was just going to judge on the quality of the work, not what was presented. A lot of the assignments were to take that and then defend your beliefs through the Bible, through scientific reasoning. So I think that really helped me to solidify my beliefs in a lot of scientific areas.
So, in general, what was high school like for you?
Like the day-to-day?
Yeah, did you enjoy it? Did you, oh man, I really don't want to go down there today. I don't want to be around those people or anything like that. Or
I really enjoyed high school. I got to go to school and be with my friends for the fun parts of it, and then I got to go home and really put in the time to do my schoolwork, which I enjoyed. I don't have to be around people all the time to enjoy myself, and I'm self-motivated. So it wasn't too much of a struggle for me to get through the schoolwork or just be content with where I was.
So am I correct in assuming that peer pressure wasn't a real big deal to you?
There were definitely moments where people were trying to pressure me to do things, but I don't know, I've never really fallen susceptible to that or felt like it was that much of a push, because I've always seen things as black and white, so I'll just be like, no.
So it wasn't a big deal.
Not really.
It was there, but
yeah,
you didn't really, you saw it for what it was.
Yeah.
And
I'm so thankful I never struggled with the want or the fear of being excluded for not saying yes to something.
All right, so did you ever have any big disappointments that you can look back on and go, man, I'd do that different. I wish I hadn't done that or anything like that?
I don't know.
Yeah, okay.
Nothing that comes to mind.
Oh, well, that's probably a good thing. So, all right, well, let's go this way on that same question. Did you ever have any big deals that you look back on and think, yeah, that was kind of a turning point, or that was I'm glad that happened?
I don't think there's anything pertaining to my schooling necessarily or friendships.
I guess what I'm asking about life, I mean, in your life, you're what, 19, 20?
19, yeah.
Okay.
I think saying yes to God asking me to be homeschooled, that was a big point in my life. And I still don't really know why I was homeschooled. I'm sure there was something I was protected from. Part of it could be COVID. I didn't miss any schooling during COVID, whereas a lot of kids did. Part of it could have just been getting ahead in other classes. I'm not exactly sure why I was supposed to be homeschooled, but I did it, and I'm sure there's a huge reason that I'll find out about someday.
You will.
Yeah.
I can tell you this. There's nothing that I look back on in my life that I can't see the hand of God in. and the reason for it. Even stuff that was off the charts wrong.
Yeah.
You know, God didn't move me to that point. I made those poor choices, but God used them to teach me things for now. You know,
Yeah.
I always say I never had a job that I didn't use later on, the skills that I learned in that job later on in life. You know, when I was in high school, I was a busboy at a restaurant, which was basically clear the table. You know, I learned that at home when it's my turn to clean the table off, you know, and do the dishes. And I got there one night, and the fry cook didn't show up. So they said, and I could cook eggs. I could cook my own eggs, fry eggs and bacon. That's what I knew how to do. And I said, yeah, I know how to do that. So they stuck me on this grill at this restaurant, and I learned to cook. Well, years later, I end up being the guy that's in charge of all the big meals that we were serving at church. You know, there was times when we
Yeah.
were serving 250, 300 people.
Yep.
And I knew how to do that because I'd learned that back in high school. You know, different things like
Yep.
that. You know, my first big job was driving a dump truck, and now I'm driving a school bus, and just different things like
Yeah.
this.
And I think being content in the unknown is something you learn throughout the years.
Yeah, that's good. What's the biggest challenge you've overcome? Let's go to college. All right, let's go to college. So high school is over, and why did you choose UNI?
I really wanted to get a business degree, and you and I had a great business program, and I also really wanted to stay involved with color guard because I love color guard. It's my passion. And you and I had a great color guard, and they have a dome. So
Yes.
you're not outside in the wind or the snow.
Oh, wow,
Which
yeah.
is incredible.
And you don't perform at away games.
Correct.
Okay.
Just home games. So I visited you and I was like, wow, this feels like a great place. I like it. Originally, I wanted something really small, private Christian college, close to home. Mm-hmm. That's not what this is. But I love it now. It was definitely a huge change to be so far from home. One of my probably biggest struggles in college was just being extremely homesick. I was so homesick second semester of my freshman year, and I almost convinced myself to just drive home and never go back, even though there was a lot of good things at college, and I loved the ministry I was in. I actually started at a different ministry and then ended up switching because I found that the new one aligned a little bit more with how I was raised and what I believe. But yeah, second semester was really hard, and I would call my mom crying like every night, and then, you know, I don't know, by the grace of God, I persevered, and then I went back, and this semester has been so much better, and I've seen God working through that time and that struggle because it's made me so much more compassionate for new students who are feeling homesick. Yeah, so I think there's learning opportunities in any struggle you go through, and I'm kind of excited to see how I will continue to learn from that experience.
Yeah, well, first of all, you're not the Lone Ranger in that. Mm-hmm. Everybody, almost everybody, I don't know anybody that didn't go through some degree of that. And it's interesting you say your second semester.
Yeah.
But your first, and I can tell you why, because that happened to me, and it happened after football was over. I went to school to play football. Second semester, football's over.
Yep.
Really got nothing going.
Yep.
But yourself and your thoughts.
Yeah. No, that's very similar to myself. I was super busy with color guard first semester. I was making all these new friends and stuff. And then second semester hits, half my friends leave. Half they drop out or whatever happens. Half my friends, they get busy with other stuff.
Sure.
And then at that point, I was not feeling like I was in the correct campus ministry for myself at the time. I just wasn't feeling like I was being filled up or learning much from it. So then I was switching to a different campus ministry, and I lose all those people. So then it was kind of like I was starting over, but nobody else was, and everybody else kind of had their cliques already. And aside from that, it's just home is far away, so that's hard to get back to.
Now, do you have a car?
I do.
Okay.
Yep.
Did you your first semester?
I did.
Okay.
Yes.
So you could, you say far away.
Yeah.
You're about 5 hours.
About 4, yeah.
4?
So really not that bad.
So
But
you drive faster than me. So we talked about peer pressure in high school. Is it different in college?
yeah, I think just because of how my high school experience was, I'm exposed to a lot more peer pressure in college. But I haven't ever found anybody that won't respect my choice of saying no to whatever it may be.
Do you feel ostracized when you say no?
No, not really. I know I have people that are there to back me up in
Yeah.
most situations. So it's not something that necessarily, it maybe makes me feel excluded in the moment, but it's not something that is excluding me long term because I know there's other people that are there for me.
So that leads me to this question. What do you do when the gang wants to go one way and you don't want to go that direction?
Honestly, I just say, like, hey, I'm busy.
Okay.
Whatever. I might not be busy at all, but I'll find something to do.
All right. So you just turn it down. You're comfortable in that.
Yeah.
You understand that's unique.
Yeah.
Not everybody. That's hard. That's hard for some people to. What do my grandkids call it? FOMO. You know what? The fear
Yep.
of missing out.
Yeah.
I guess that's a real thing.
Yeah.
I don't have that problem, but because I'm old and like to go to bed early. But yeah.
Yeah. And I think I attribute my ability to be strong in that choice to how I was raised, both by, children's pastor, you yourself, you were my children's pastor, and then youth pastors who have just raised me in my beliefs and taught me to be strong in who I am in Christ. And then also my parents have set an incredible example of following Christ and how that looks in life. And so I think by striving to do what he says, it's become easy for me to not be as tempted by the worldly actions of others.
You mentioned something earlier about this semester, this year. You've got friends around you that you can relate to and relate to you. Address the importance of that to people.
I think there's a quote and it says, show me your 5 closest friends and I'll show you your future. And so it's so important to surround yourself with people who are building you up because you become who you spend time with. And Proverbs talks about this a lot, about you need to choose your friends wisely because they're going to influence your actions. And so when you really prioritize finding those good friends, even though maybe you go through a season of struggle, like I did my second semester of not really having anybody, but knowing that I can't settle for somebody who's not going to build me up.
That was a conscious thought for you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
It was definitely, I'm sure my prayer journal is full of that. Yeah, I consciously thought, like, hey, I need to make sure I'm surrounding myself with good people who are building me up and not just being friends with anybody. Even though it is important to build those other relationships to further the kingdom of God. Yeah, but by having friends who have a like faith and who have the same convictions that you do, it becomes a lot easier because you're doing life together and you're learning together, you're growing together. So I've found these friends through, the beginning of band camp this year. I was just very open about my faith and not as reserved. And part of that was because I was in a leadership position. So I felt like I could be open. And so I found 3 really great friends on the color guard team who share a faith with me. And so that was awesome. That's awesome to have.
They weren't there last year?
2 of them were, but we didn't really know each other.
Okay.
And we were just on different paths at the time in our faith, different stages. So having those girls is awesome because a lot of my time is spent in color guard. So having them there is incredible. And then I also got really involved with Chi Alpha and my small group. And so I know that those girls are always there for me, especially my Chi Alpha leaders. Yeah, I feel like I've been able to connect a lot more since last year. I didn't join Chi Alpha until a little bit later in the semester. It's been awesome to be there from the beginning and to start building those relationships at the same time everybody else is building relationships. I also got a lot more involved this year, just like doing things, joining people when they're going to watch a musical or whatever.
Not necessarily Christian events, just
just social events in general.
Good, clean social events.
Yeah, that's something I didn't really do the previous year because I was so focused on color guard and school.
And how you felt missing home.
Yes, and wallowing in my sorrows.
Yeah. It's real. There's no doubt about it. And my advice is always in those situations, because I've got college age grandchildren that have all gone through it, and is always get out there and do something.
Yeah.
Get out there, just, because and then you run into,
Yeah. You'll find the people that support you
when
you
you're
get out and do
sitting at
stuff.
home praying 24 hours a day, even if you're praying 24 hours a day, it doesn't give God the opportunity to put you on the path he wants you on.
Yeah.
And not that I'm against praying or anything like that, of course, but you need to get out there, and that's been my experience. You'll run into the will of God. In fact, Pastor said it this Sunday. I don't know if you were there. I don't know if you caught it, that if you're out there doing the known will of God, the personal will of God will show up in your life.
Yes. Yep.
And that's so true. So what advice would you give your younger self? You've got a sister that's, what, third grade?
Fourth grade, yeah.
Fourth grade. All right. What's the best advice you could give her?
I would tell her to really...
Other than stay out of my room, stay out of my stuff.
I think the importance of friend choice is huge. And then beyond that, I think spiritual disciplines are really important in the Christian life. So that is having daily reading of your Bible, daily connection with God, just prayer, listening is huge. Keeping a prayer journal, that's something that I've found is really helpful for me, because I can look back and see, wow, like God answered that prayer, God answered that prayer, God answered that prayer. And then also praying for opportunities of deep biblical conversation with others. It's incredible how when you start praying for those opportunities, they start showing up and you start recognizing them. And that's the best way you can complete the Great Commission. God tells us to go into the world and share the gospel. And how are you going to do that if you're not filled up yourself by doing these spiritual disciplines?
Okay. I want to wind this down, but I've got some questions I'm curious about. Do you have a spiritual plan for your life? Do you know what I mean by that?
I do not.
You don't know what I mean, or you don't have one?
I don't know what you mean.
Where would you like to be spiritually in the future that you don't feel like you are now? And do you have a plan to get there? And if the answer is, I'm where I want to be and I'm fine.
Well, I don't think you can ever be where you want to be, because there's always...
Spiritually.
Yeah, spiritually, because you can always be closer to God. You can always be more righteous. You can always do more. And so I think there's not really an end goal of where you can be spiritually, but there's always a strive for more and to be closer with God, to know God's heart more. So, yeah, I don't really have a plan. I think I'm just continuing in my spiritual disciplines, continuing to learn about God, learn who he is. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe that's the plan, just to continue.
Yeah, continue to stay steadfast.
I asked that question one time, and the plan was to read their Bible every day. In fact, I talked to them just the other day and asked them how that was going, and probably 3-4 nights a week. So, but I'm trying, and that's what I guess I mean. What have you learned about life since you started college that you didn't know?
I learned that I don't know very much.
Okay.
I think one of the biggest lessons I've been taught in college, and not from college, just during college, is how important it is in where you put your hope. So hope has to be placed in God and God alone, because he's the only thing that will never fail you. Friends and family, boyfriends, girlfriends, husbands, wives, they're going to fail you in one way or another, always. But God won't fail you, because he's consistent and persistent, and he's unchanging, and he's worthy of all glory, simply because of who he is. So, when I learned not to lose hope, it's meaning don't lose God. Don't lose hope is the same as don't lose God, because God is hope. And you don't want to lose your expectancy of what is to come, and you don't want to lose sight of his glory and promises. So I think that whole mindset and understanding of who he is something I've really learned, because that can carry a person through their tough times and allow them to also complete the mission that God has given. So biggest lesson from college, not from college, in college, is hang on to hope.
You're blowing me away, Joslyn. You're much deeper than I expected, which is great. I'm loving this. So who's the biggest influence in your life?
I think my mom and my dad. I'm so thankful in the way they've raised me. And Proverbs is full of instruction of disciplining your children and how important it is to be deeply rooted. And I'm really thankful that they raised me that way, and I want to raise my kids that way in their faith and having a true understanding of who God is and a true relationship with him. And I wake up in the morning when I'm home and I come upstairs and my mom's on the couch reading her Bible. She exemplifies all these spiritual disciplines, and that encourages me to continue and imitate. You know, as a daughter, you want to imitate your mother and you want to follow your father's instructions. And so by seeing my mom in her spiritual disciplines, I've begun to imitate them. And that's encouraged me to imitate them. And my dad, I know I can come to him with any question and he'll dive into it with me. So there's been times where I've called him and I'm like, hey Dad, I'm kind of questioning this in the Bible. What do you know about it? What can you give me about it? And he, recently I asked, can you tell me stuff about believers' authority? And he sent me a PDF that he had written up a couple months ago and all these podcasts and all these different verses about it. And I was like, wow, thank you. So personal study plan curated by my father.
Yeah.
Yeah, so just having my parents is great. And I'm so thankful that I have those deep roots and those people to fall back on when I have questions.
You didn't bring this up in the realm of peer pressure in high school. And, like I said, I pay attention to kids. That's just kind of my nature.
Yep.
I don't want that to sound weird. Boys and girls, I'm just interested in what they're going through and how they're handling it, so on and so forth. I'm not aware that you ever had a steady boyfriend in high school. Was that, I'm going to assume that was a choice.
Yes.
That was a choice.
It was a choice. It was intentional. From a young age, I said I will not date until I graduate high school.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Was that your dad
No,
walking around the house with a shotgun saying, not until you're 21?
That could have been a little bit. But no, I watched my older sister go through a lot of breakups and disappointment because of boys. And I just said I didn't want to go through that. And I've heard, there's tons of statistics saying you date in high school and
So
really,
did you date, though? Did you go out on dates?
I did not.
You did
I
not.
refused. I said, well, because what's the point of dating if it's not for marriage? If it's not to further a relationship?
Okay. You sure you're only 19?
I think so. We can go get my birth certificate if you want.
No, I know you are. I happened to be there. I remember when you were born. But anyway.
Yeah, so I just promised myself I wouldn't date in high school. And I actually had a pastor laugh at me for saying that. And he said, good luck. And I said, okay, watch me.
Okay, so you were challenged.
I was challenged, yeah. Maybe that's a little bit of my competitive side coming out.
Yeah. That's okay. So now you're out of high school. Are you dating or do you have a date? I don't know how to ask the question. Do you have a boyfriend?
I do.
Okay.
I do.
Great.
Yeah.
He must have checked a lot of boxes, I would guess.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I have a list of qualities that I want in my future husband, and he's checking them. So.
Okay. Does he know that?
I think so.
Okay. All right. I won't go any further with it. I'm happy. I really am. Marriage is great when you're married to the right person.
Yeah.
It really is. I can't imagine my life right now. I've been married 47 years. Is that right? 7 from 14. Yes, it's 47 years.
That's awesome.
And I just can't imagine not being. But at any rate. Okay, so last question. You've got a group of 17-year-old girls sitting in front of you. And you've got 5 minutes to give them your best advice.
Ooh.
What's at the top of the list?
Okay. I think it's to rest in the peace that God always has a plan for you. And you better bet it's a good one, because our God is a loving God and will do anything for us. I think it's Deuteronomy 31:8 that says the Lord himself will go before you. Oh, gosh. And he will never leave you nor forsake you. So do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged. And God goes before you and he lays his path for you. So when troubles or setbacks come, you can laugh at them, laugh in the face of adversity, because you know and you can rest in the peace that God has a plan and all his glory will be revealed in due time. So no matter how hard it is, you have to remember that all of it works together for his plan. And God is an all-powerful God, and he's an all-loving God. So why would you not follow his instructions and his path that he's laying before you? Because you know he loves you, so he's going to want what's the best for you. And he's all-knowing, so he knows what steps you should take. And I think part of that can lead into the saying no to peer pressure, because by following God's instructions, you're following the path that he has laid for you, and you know it's a good one because he's a good God.
I heard a whole bunch of scripture in there. Trust in the Lord and lean not on your own understanding. God's got a good plan for your life, so relax and let it happen.
Yep.
That's great, Joslyn. Yeah. Thank you very much. Do you have anything you want to add before we?
Nope. Thank you for having me.
That's our podcast for the day. Thanks for listening. If you're interested in a daily devotional, we have what we call the Word to Live By that goes out every morning. To have that sent to you on a daily basis, send me an email at pbwags@gmail.com. That's pbwaggs@gmail.com. Thanks again for listening. See you next time.